What the CDC says you can and cannot do if you've been vaccinated. Oprah saves live television with her Harry and Meghan interview, but what do Brits say about it? And Looney Tunes retires one of its iconic characters. Tuesday, Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Tuesday, March 9th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Carlo, good morning.
Good morning, Wags. How are you?
Good. A friend of mine, Sam Ojiri, who's the meteorologist over at News 12, posted that next week we'll be getting 7 p.m. sunsets. This is the last week for a while that the sun will set before 7. So get excited.
I think it's supposed to be like 60 in New York today or tomorrow, one of these days. This is spring is coming. Things are looking up, Jill.
I don't know. You woke up one morning a couple weeks ago an optimist, and I'm into it.
I haven't gone back. Although I have to say, I woke up in a very bad mood today because my skin is breaking out, and I'm just like, I'm turning 37 in a week from today. I think. Yeah, next Tuesday. I turn 37 years old, and my skin is still breaking out. What is that? Why? I thought that ends.
I think you probably need some sun, maybe stress. I don't know.
Yeah. Like a teenager over here.
All right, let's get to some news. The CDC has issued its highly anticipated guidance for people who have been vaccinated. So if you are 2 weeks past your last shot, you can now meet with other vaccinated people without masks or distancing, according to these federal guidelines. And you can also mingle with unvaccinated people from a single household indoors without masks, provided that those people are low-risk individuals like grandkids or healthy adults.
Great news, right?
Yes. Wonderful.
I had a cynical first reaction because I was like, oh, great. Like all these people who've already been doing these things will now just continue to do them. But then my sister last night told my niece and nephew that they could sleep over at my mom and dad's house just based on the CDC guidance for the first time in more than a year. So, not everyone is as jaded as me, and that's a good thing. Also, it was nice to see that the CDC explicitly laid out in these guidelines that they're putting these out to incentivize vaccine uptake, basically saying like we want to give people a reason to get the shots, right? So it's not just all doom and gloom. Like you are going to be able to change your outlook and your way of life when you're inoculated from this dang virus.
We've been saying that for a while, right? The message of do nothing differently once you get vaccinated, that just doesn't cut it, especially when it's not so easy to get a vaccine right now in terms of signing up for one. That doesn't work. James Hamblin, one of our go-to guys, he's a doctor. He writes for The Atlantic, and he's been ahead of this story from the get-go. He wrote on Twitter, interesting that it's big news that vaccinated people can hang out. I feel like that should have already been clear. Kind of, I guess it's because COVID is so new. There's been so much confusion about it, and the vaccines are new, so it wasn't clear if there was asymptomatic spread. But that's sort of how first of all, we've kind of jumped the gun in my family, and I was hoping we weren't going to regret it, but we were allowing my parents to hang with our daughter and their other grandkids, which has been wonderful. But it was always how I felt about masks, right? Where it was like, we don't know yet about the science, and it was like, I'm talking about the beginning of the pandemic last year at this time, and it was like, how could covering your face possibly be a bad thing? Like, why would you
It's a respiratory virus.
Cases, by the way, rose last week at their slowest pace since the pandemic started, just 1.5%. President Biden planning to address the nation on Thursday night in his first primetime address, marking 1 year since the first lockdowns went into effect.
It will be the 11th. March 11th is really the day, right? That was the day last year that everyone realized that we were really in for it. That was like the day that they canceled March Madness. Tom Hanks came out saying he had COVID. A bunch of other things happened that day. So we should probably mark that on Thursday. Also, this out of CNN I thought was interesting. More people in the U.S. have now been fully vaccinated against COVID than people who have had the disease since the pandemic began. That's based on CDC data. Now, that probably isn't entirely accurate because I think a lot more people have had this thing than the CDC data suggests. But still, I think it's just another sort of marker to show that things are going in the right direction. We are now, by the way, we are down to 40,000 cases a day, not on the 7-day rolling average, which is the metric that's important. But we may get there soon. So, good stuff all around.
I will just say, not to be a Debbie Downer, testing is down dramatically. Not in New York, but in a lot of other states where they've basically turned testing centers into vaccination centers. So the key metric really is hospitalizations, I think. But by all accounts, I think, knock on wood, we appear to be turning a corner here. To politics now, Missouri Senator Roy Blunt not going to be seeking re-election next year, the latest in a string of veteran Republican senators to call it quits. Blunt follows Senator Rob Portman of Ohio, Senator Richard Shelby of Alabama, Senator Patrick Toomey of Pennsylvania, all of them known as bipartisan deal makers who have announced their retirement rather than face the prospect of being primaried by a Trump-backed opponent.
If you believe, Jill, that we need in this country a functioning GOP party, a functioning Republican party, this is bad news all around. I mean, these guys are, they're a little out of touch, I think, because they're old and they've been doing this forever. But they're really the old hats of the Senate. These were the guys who were like down to make deals over drinks at the Hay Adams Hotel, right, or cross party lines to get stuff done and really work with the other side of the aisle. So the sad fact is that I think these guys are seeing that Congress isn't really about that kind of stuff anymore. It's about building this sort of personal brand based on, grievance or outrage or hating the other side, that people now use so that they can become famous, so that they can write a book or they can get a job as a TV commentator or run for the presidency. So it's not good. It's just, the country, I think, is better off for people like the Blunts and the Shelbys of the world to be in the Senate. So it'll be interesting to see who ends up taking their place.
On much lighter political news, CNN also reporting that the 2 German shepherds belonging to President Biden were returned to the Biden family home in Delaware last week after aggressive behavior at the White House involving Major Biden. He bit a Secret Service member, apparently.
So sad. They sent him back. They sent him home. They sent him back.
They sent him home.
God. I mean, I've had rescue dogs, so I know that like sometimes they can have some biting incidents, but I guess in the White House that's sort of that's not really cool, right? I guess. Oh, I don't know. It makes me really depressed.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. Okay, switching gears, jury selection in the Derrick Chauvin trial is expected to start today after there was a delay so that the court could review a motion to add a new third-degree murder charge against him. Chauvin, if you don't remember, he is the former Minneapolis police officer charged with killing George Floyd last Memorial Day. Now, because that trial is happening in Minneapolis where Floyd died, the process of picking an impartial jury is expected to take weeks. The trial is being televised. So that'll be, we'll get an inside look at what's going on in that courtroom.
I'm surprised they're doing that. I wonder why that is. I think I thought that after OJ, they sort of stopped televising trials because they realized what a sideshow it becomes, right?
Well, the judge said something like, that just there's so much national interest that, and they just want to make sure everything is, is up to snuff and is appropriate. So
I guess that makes sense. I saw this USA Today poll yesterday that I made a note of. I thought this was so interesting. So last June, according to this USA Today Suffolk poll, 60% of survey respondents characterized George Floyd's death as murder. This was right after he died. That number is now 36%. Back last June, 4% of people said that they didn't know how to describe that incident. Now 17% say they don't know how to describe that incident. So it's very interesting to see how public opinion. I mean, that's a significant change in a
Wow.
Yeah.
Right? Why? I wonder why.
I don't know. I mean, I think probably part of it has to do. I mean, when that video came out, I mean, that video is so upsetting at like every level. So I think that I think if you haven't seen it in a while, maybe there's been, maybe you've forgotten a little bit. I mean, there's definitely a move sort of on the right to say that. That Floyd was died of a fentanyl overdose rather than having his neck compressed. That's not entirely accurate, though, because the autopsy did conclude that his primary cause of death was cardiopulmonary arrest, complicating law enforcement, subdual restraint, and a neck compression. But he did have fentanyl in his system, which I think will become a big part of this case in the trial.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of finding a jury, they don't need to find people who've never heard of the case or who've never heard of George Floyd. That is not what would make a juror acceptable. The juror just has to show that they haven't made up their mind about it, that they are open to hearing both sides. It is going to be fascinating though to watch, and as a reporter, I'm glad they're letting cameras in. I want to see the trial, right? I mean, I think that is part of it. Okay, on to the economy. Goldman Sachs predicting that the U.S. is about to enter a hiring boom that could bring the unemployment rate down to 4.1% by the end of this year, about where it was this time last year, just before the wheels fell off the economy. In fact, that boom appears to have already started. Last Friday, the February jobs report showed a surprise gain of 379,000 jobs, the majority of which came from the leisure and hospitality industries.
That was a nice gain. I think that they were expecting 200,000 or something. So
yeah,
good to see that.
Especially given, I mean, every economist every group has their own predictions. Some were thinking it was going to be around there, but especially because of the storms in Texas in February, that was that was going to depress the number a bit. So without that, and February is a short month, so without that, it may have been even higher.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Goldman in this report also noting that 2/3 of the remaining job losses, the pandemic-related job losses from the last year, are in those sectors, in the leisure and hospitality and service sectors. So they're predicting that this boom is really going to take off once more things reopen, once more states reopen. And the their GDP forecast for the year is 7.7%, which would be insane. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that. So again, that's just Goldman Sachs. Their one forecast, but what I'm really looking for is Q2 GDP, Jill. I think is going to be off the charts, which will come out when? June or July? That'll be really interesting to see. Mm-hmm.
Oprah's interview with Harry and Meghan blew the ratings out of the water. More than 17 million people tuned in. That is more than how many people watched the Emmys and the Golden Globes combined. The interview aired in the UK last night. The reaction in the British press has been somewhat more hysterical than here. The Daily Mail's run at least 24 stories on Harry and Meghan since Sunday, while also calling that interview a sideshow. The Sun suggesting that Meghan no longer welcome in Britain. Piers Morgan walked off the set of Good Morning Britain today after his co-host defended the couple. Get a grip.
Remember when Remember when Piers Morgan tried to have a comeback here and it just failed miserably? We're not having him. The Telegraph, which is a somewhat like the Daily Mail and the Sun. These are tabloids, right? These are like the New York Posts of Britain, only actually crazier. The Telegraph, which is actually somewhat of a more normal daily newspaper there, I thought this was amazing. They compared Harry and Meghan's self-imposed exile to that of King Edward and Wallis Simpson, who were pretty much banished from the United Kingdom after Edward abdicated the throne so that he could marry Wallis, which you'll remember if you watch The Crown. It was like a big, what was that, season 2 maybe? But it was a big part of a big plot line of the show. So I'm quoting the Telegraph here. The saddest thing is that Wallis and Edward, despite being banished, were dutiful and patriotic to the end. Well, they were known Nazi sympathizers who met with Adolf Hitler in 1937. So I'm not exactly sure that I would make that comparison. But I think that just shows you that this interview over there sort of not going the way it went over here, which makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, even among the public, right? So those are the papers, right, which are their own animal. But The interview is getting mixed reviews even amongst the public. A poll showing 47% of people in the UK thinking the interview was inappropriate. Only 21% think it's appropriate. I was listening
in the UK
to a
or
royal
here?
In the UK.
Okay, go. Sorry.
And I was listening to a royal expert, and I thought this was pretty interesting. She said Brits love to critique the royals themselves, okay, and are some of the harshest critics.
Yeah.
But it's just not okay when others do it for a lot of Brits. So it's like, you could poke fun or criticize your own family or your brother, but if someone else does it, those are fighting words. So perhaps they are a bit defensive, right? I mean, this is their thing.
I remember when I used to when I went to London several times when I worked at NBC to work on their international desk there, and it was all staffed by these like cranky old Brits, and it was that exact thing. It was like, we can talk smack about our royal family and how dysfunctional they are, but you Americans, you come in here and start talking about it, and we got a problem. So it's pretty.
Yeah,
it's
I think it's human nature.
Yeah,
for sure. And also, just regarding that interview, kudos to Oprah and CBS for not teasing everything. And I find that these days, that's what just we do, right? We tease the best parts of an interview ahead of time. They could have really teased. There were so many elements of the interview, particularly, the racism claims, etc. But they kept everything under wraps. And that's why that interview was so compelling. And also kudos for just long form interviews. We're so all about cramming everything into TikTok videos or, get the best soundbite, run that, right? Make everything quicker. And I just thought it was definitely a win for long form.
That's a great point, Jill. And it just made me think, before we move on, about how we were talking last week about TV ratings just being down across the board. It shows you that if the content is compelling, right? If it's a compelling interview, a great interviewer, people will tune in. People will sit through the commercials and watch live TV if they're given a reason to, not just for it, not just because it's on, right?
And one of the other interesting reactions from Brits who watched that interview somewhat in real time, however they were able to do it, is they were like shocked at our commercials. They were shocked that there were commercials for drugs. One person wrote, "I don't understand. Why are you supposed to ask your doctor about a medicine? Shouldn't they be telling you what kind of medicine you should be on?" And it's like, welcome to American medicine, for sure.
The land of, yes. If you have socialized medicine, you do not need to worry about that. That was so funny.
Meanwhile, the Oscar race increasingly looking like it is Nomadland's to lose. The docu-style film about a woman's journey through the American West in her van cleaned up at the Critics' Choice Awards on Sunday, winning 4 trophies, including for Best Picture and Best Director, and snagged a Best Picture nom from the Producers Guild. It's expected to pick up more steam when the BAFTA nominations are announced today. Oscar nominations come out next week.
Borat also picked up a Producers Guild nomination for Best Picture, which is that was a little. Could that actually be an Oscar dark horse? Probably not, but interesting nonetheless. Nomadland. I don't know if we discussed it, but I really, really loved it. I would highly recommend it. You haven't seen it yet, have you?
No, I haven't.
It's on Hulu. It's you should check it out if you can this weekend. But by the way, we didn't talk about Coming to America. Did you watch that?
We did. We watched half Friday night and the other half Saturday night.
So what was your quick take?
I mean, I was such a fan of the first Coming to America. Yeah. I thought that it was fine. It was okay. Baker watched it. He loved it. Yeah. I didn't find it. I thought it was fine. You watch the original, Carlo, then watch the second one, and we could talk.
I just have remakes of movies that were really important to me as a kid. I just really have a hard time watching, like the Ghostbusters remake. I couldn't bring myself to watch it because like the original Ghostbusters was like a really formative movie for me as a child. So I feel like that's kind of the same way you have with Coming to America.
It's not a remake, right? It's not a remake.
Right.
It's sort of a continuation of the story. 30 years later, Eddie Murphy finds out that he has a son who he was going to bring over to be the next king or the next prince. It's okay. Like, it's just, the first one was just so good that, but they brought back a lot of the original characters. I'm curious what people thought. I personally was like, meh, I'm glad I saw it. If it's on, I'd watch it again, probably.
Back. It didn't blow your hair back.
No, and I thought I didn't know. As I'm looking and I have
was
a roller
sort
in
of
my hair.
I was making a little bit of a joke. I was wondering if you would pick up on that. Jill's, if you're not watching, Jill's got her big poof with her TV rollers in.
Which is why I love podcasts without video.
I got pimples all over.
Pepe Le Pew. Finally, Pepe Le Pew, the love-lorn skunk from Looney Tunes, has been scrubbed from the upcoming Space Jam sequel and reportedly won't appear in any upcoming Looney Tunes-related projects. Warner Brothers is said to have quietly decided to retire the character more than a year ago. Le Pew was recently called out by the New York Times columnist Charles Blow for, quote, adding to rape culture.
Imagine having a weekly New York Times column and choosing this issue to write about. It's amazing to me. So I've been working on like a new rule of thumb because these stories now are just coming out like every day, and I feel like we have to keep talking about them, about sort of like these cancellations or like changes of art. So my basic rule of thumb is as follows, and I'm still working on this, but it's pretty much like I have a problem if you're doing something retroactively, like if they were to be like taking the Pepe Le Pew skunk out of old Looney Tunes cartoons, I would have a problem with that. Anything that's proactive in terms of just like changing, getting rid of taking a book out of print or retiring a character because of norms changing, I don't really care. That's kind of where I stand on this, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, I like it. Can we start with Mein Kampf? Is that still even being published? I think it probably is, right? Like I always occasionally read things that it's like, selling off the shelf. So let's start there.
Well, I think you could. Yeah, that's a good
one. Okay, that is what you need to know for Tuesday, March 9th.
Have a good one, guys.